That song means a lot more taken in the context of what Isaiah said about what we need to do. But we're not good at waiting, are we? So we're not good at being patient. Sue Monk Kidd is an author of some best-selling books, The Secret Life of Bees and The Mermaid Chair. You guys may have read some of those. But anyway, she tells a story that reflects our often mistaken viewpoint on waiting. She went to a retreat at a monastery, and here's what she said about a monk. She was watching a monk in the monastery. He was sitting perfectly still beneath a tree. There was such reverence in his silhouette, such tranquil sturdiness, that I paused to watch. He was the picture of waiting. And later I sought him out and said, I saw you sitting beneath a tree, just sitting there so still. How is it that you can wait so patiently in the moment? I can't seem to get used to the idea of doing nothing. Well, he broke out into this huge grin, and he said, well, that's the problem right there, young lady. You've bought into the cultural myth that when you're waiting, you're doing nothing. So then he took his hands and placed them on my shoulders and looked straight into my eyes and said, I hope you'll hear what I'm about to tell you. I hope you'll hear it all the way down to your toes. And he said, when you're waiting, you're not doing nothing. You're doing the most important something that there is. You're allowing your soul to grow up. If you can't be still and wait, you can't become what God created you to be. So what that monk said to her really sank in. It's like she thought he was just doing nothing and just, wow, he was being peaceful. But he wasn't. He was waiting. And something we don't do well. So first, we come. And secondly, we take his yoke. We give up control. So the fact is, like we talked about a few minutes ago, if you need to control everything, you're going to be very stressed and overloaded. And if you're a control freak, you're always going to be too busy because you always feel like you have to do everything. You're going to be frustrated. But instead of trying to do everything yourself, Jesus says, take my yoke upon you. Now when you just hear that, you might be thinking, well, that doesn't sound very restful. Take his yoke. Yokes are heavy. That does not sound like a restful thing to do. I'm already carrying too much. Why would I put a yoke on? So let's talk about what a yoke is. Did anybody in here grow up on a farm? Anybody? No? Okay.
I touched a cow once.
Yeah, good. But, so, most of us didn't grow up on a farm. You've got a picture in your handout of two cows with a yoke on. And what a yoke is a wooden beam that stretches across two farm animals. And it attaches them so they can distribute the load so that they can do better work as a team. A yoke spans two animals, so the burden is shared and the load is lightened. The purpose of the yoke is to make it easier for the animal, not more difficult. So when Jesus says to take on his yoke, he's obviously not talking about getting you ready to plow. So why does he use the yoke as a symbol here? Well, because first, it's a symbol of partnership. You don't yoke all by yourself. There are two of you working on something, not just one. And Jesus says, I will help you with your problems. I will help you carry your load. He doesn't add to it. He helps you carry it. If you listen to Psalm 55, verse 22, it says, cast your burden on the Lord and he shall sustain you. But I really like the way the Message translates that. It says, pile your troubles on God's shoulders. He'll carry your load and he'll help you out. So if you're feeling overwhelmed or burned out, maybe it's because you're not yoked to Christ the way he intends you to be. And I'm not saying you're not doing your job as a Christian and all of that, but maybe you're not yoked quite right. Sometimes we take our yoke off because, well, we think we know better. We think we can do it without God or whatever. Sometimes we take it off because we want to do something he wouldn't want to go into with us. And when we do put it on, we gripe about it. You know, like the Israelites, griping about the blessings that he gave them every single day. We're good at griping. But every time you get detached from Jesus, every time I get detached from Jesus, my stress goes up. And every time I get reattached to Jesus, my stress goes down. It's that simple. So the yoke is, first of all, a symbol of partnership. And secondly, it's a symbol of control. Because farmers use the yoke to guide and direct and control the farm animals, what direction they will go. When oxen are yoked together, they're controlled by the master. And when you're under Christ's yoke, you're controlled by God. You have to give up your control to do that. So you do need direction in your life. You need the yoke for direction, but you also need it as a pace setter. All of us have a tendency to either go too fast or too slow than we need to. And Jesus knows better than you do what's the adequate, appropriate pace for your life. Every time you get away from that yoke of Jesus and you start going in another direction, you're going to get in trouble. Every time you get out from under that yoke and you start going really fast at your own pace down the wrong road, you get in trouble. We need to depend on God for both direction and pace, and that's what yoking does. So how do you do that? Well, take a look at Galatians 5, verse 25, and it says, since we live in the Spirit, let's keep in step with the Spirit. So a long time ago, our daughter Allie took piano lessons, and I used to love to sit outside the studio and just listen. Her instructor was an amazing musician, and it was just fun to listen to him and her play, and as long as she counted while she played, she could play the music in a lovely, melodic, purposeful way. But if she didn't count, everything kind of fell apart. She might get the notes right, but it didn't make any melodic sense. So when you're a musician and you stop counting, it's just a bunch of random notes. And when you're a musician and you stop counting, you kind of lose the song's way. When you're a Christian and you stop counting your blessings, you've lost your way. It's like blindfolding yourself and then wondering why it got dark. And Jesus, if you think about pace, he never seemed to be in a hurry. We never read anything in the Bible where it says, and he went as fast as he could from this place to that place. I don't see that. One time he had a friend who was about 3 miles away, a friend who died about 3 miles away, and it took Jesus 3 days to get there. That's pretty slow walking. Why? Why did he do that? I mean, he doesn't say, but I think it's because he knew that God had a plan. God did not want to heal a sick man. God wanted to raise a dead man. That was a greater miracle, a better plan. We think our plan is pretty cool, but we rush into it without taking the time to think and get counsel or whatever. And maybe God's plan was way over here, but it was really, really better. The truth is you're going to be yoked to something. We're all yoked to something. You may be yoked to your career or the expectations of other people. You might be yoked to the negative voices from your past, or a critical spirit, or a negative outlook. All those are heavy burdens to carry on your shoulders. And Jesus said, why don't you get rid of all that heavy stuff and just wear my yoke? It's light, it's easy. In the original Greek, I understand that the word there doesn't mean easy, it means perfectly fitted. Now we know that Joseph was a carpenter, and we kind of surmise that Jesus probably was too. And the Bible really doesn't say what types of things he might have built as a carpenter, but historians think that carpenters in his day and time mostly built farm implements rather than houses or other structures. And it's pretty likely that Jesus actually made some physical yokes, which is kind of cool. And the best yokes, I guess today as well as back then, but they were custom fit for every pair of animals so that it fit them perfectly and didn't rub against the shoulders so that they could do their work well. It was comfortable. It was a one-of-a-kind, uniquely fitted yoke. And ours is the same way. He's not going to put a yoke on you that doesn't fit. He made you a certain way. And we need to take that yoke of Jesus because it fits perfectly. He made it just for you. So, come. What was the second one? Take. Got it. I really know this stuff. Really, I do. And then thirdly, learn to trust. So we're to come, take, and now learn. He says, learn from me. Learning is a process. Just like you can't learn calculus just by sitting in a desk in a classroom. You can't learn from Jesus just by sitting in a pew. It doesn't happen by osmosis. It takes time and effort and patience. And if you're overloaded and burned out, like we said, you didn't just get that way overnight. It was a process of getting you there. And you won't remedy it by making one change and expect the next day to be not burned out. Okay, it's going to take a while. You're going to have to learn some new things, unlearn some bad habits. And so, what can we learn from Jesus? Well, he tells us. We just go through that verse so fast we don't pay attention. But it says, learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. And so you look at that and you go, okay, I'm overloaded, I'm stressed. He's trying to ease my burdens and he tells me to be gentle and humble. Well, how's that going to help me with my stress? I'm kind of looking for how do I do time management and how do I do some stress reduction? How do I get people to stop bothering me? I need some courage, I need some stamina, that kind of stuff. Gentle and humble doesn't quite make sense to me. But God says, if you're overloaded, you need gentleness and humility. So why? Well, because the two greatest causes of overload and burnout in your life are aggression and arrogance. Aggression.
That's a great one.
Does that surprise you to hear that it's those two things? Aggression and arrogance. Let's think about it for a minute. Aggression. I'm not talking about bully on the playground kind of aggression. I don't think you guys are going out and beating people up and so you're overloaded. It's the, I have too much to do and I have to do it all and it has to be done now and it has to be done my way. That's aggression. That's an aggressive attitude. Being aggressive with your agenda. I gotta have it now even if I can't afford it. That's aggressive. I'm being aggressive. So we overextend. We gotta do it first, we gotta do it best, and we gotta do it my way. So we get overloaded because we just do. And then it's not fun to think about. And I had to think about this for a while, but we often get burned out because of our own arrogance. Because we think we got it. Yeah, you just asked me to do all these things because I'm pretty good and I can handle it. I can handle this, I can take it on. Ego and arrogance are why we try to control everything, if you think about it. You think you know better than everybody else, and when you don't do it God's way, you're saying you think you know better than God, and that's kind of a bold statement. So it's ego that drives us to do more than we can afford or more than we can possibly fulfill in terms of commitment. Humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. Because to be humble, you have to be strong. That's not something you do because you're weak. You have to be strong to be humble. And you do it on purpose, like we talked about purpose the other day. You have to be purposeful and intentional to be humble because it's not easy. Be gentle, be humble. So how do you learn that? By watching Jesus. What was his secret of peace and humility? Well, if you look at the book of John, there's 12 instances where Jesus says, I only do what the Father tells me to do. I only say what the Father tells me to say. I think what he wants me to think. I go where he wants me to go. I stay where he wants me to stay. I do what he wants me to do. Jesus lived a life of simple, humble obedience to his Father. So do you think the stress level in your life would change if you started to live that way? If you started to think, well, I'm not going to try to please everybody in the whole world because I can't. I'm going to try to work on doing what God wants me to do, what's most important in the priorities he's given me in my life, and what matters most. And not worry about the fact that I can't get it all done, be all places, have all things, have it my way. Our daughter Caitlin got married about a month ago, and this is the time of year when we get a lot of invitations to really cool things, weddings and graduations and baby showers. But Matthew 11:28-31 is the best invitation you're ever going to get if you're burned out. It says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke on you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So where else are you going to get that kind of a deal? Not from your friends, not from work, not from watching American Ninja Warrior, not Twitter or Facebook or Reddit. The key to preventing and overcoming burnout is to do what that verse says. Okay, so for the remaining time, I'm going to switch gears and just kind of walk you through the steps, the more practical steps on the next pages. We don't have a lot of time for that, so I'll just kind of read them to you. You already know most of these. Number 1, learn to say no when you need to say no. Number 2, learn to manage your time. Don't let it manage you. Be sure to know what your priorities are and plan. Number 3, put some buffer, like Kathy was talking about. Buffer or margin in your life. Buffer is that little bit of extra time you put between one activity and another just in case. Just in case traffic is bad. Just in case you forget your purse and have to go back and get it. Or the video camera. Just in case you suddenly feel sick and have to find a bathroom right now. Without buffer, if one little thing doesn't go smoothly in your graphically planned out day, it all suffers, and everybody attached to those things suffers. So put buffer in. What's the worst thing that could happen if you put buffer in and everything goes smoothly? You get there early, right? So take something to do. It's not like that's bad. So learn to just be. Number 4, make sure your expectations are realistic. We already talked about that. Number 9, slow down. Learn to be more patient. One thing we do with our kids, we often tell our kids, come on, hurry up. Come on, come on. So we probably all do that a lot, but usually hurrying up isn't really necessary. It's just more convenient for me, right? Sometimes you gotta hurry, but sometimes it's okay to look at the bug. You know, it's okay to have one more lick of that before you put it down and go do what you gotta do. But we're in a hurry. Or people who have to think about what they say before they say it. They speak slowly and there's a lot of pauses in what they say and you just want to pull the words out because we're like, I know what you want to say, but I don't want to be rude, you know? Wait. So you want to practice this because you have to work on this. You have to learn how to do this. You want to practice this? Go to QFC or Safeway and when you're ready to check out, pick the longest line. And you stand there, and you be okay with it. And you think about the people, or you think about, wow, it's cool that I can afford all this food, or whatever. You train your mind to not go, oh, I always pick the slow line. So you got to work on that, or it will change. Okay, 6. Decide to give up some control. Decide to give up some control. Okay, it's not just going to happen. I'll give you one more example of that, and maybe some of you have heard this, but when I counsel couples, they almost always pretty much come to blows over the dishwasher and how to load it. Seriously, they do. And it's usually like this. Let's say we're just going to make the wife the control freak in this story. And so she's like, yeah, he doesn't really help. And he's like, I do too. But anyway, they'll tell the story of, she says, I asked him to help out after dinner to clean up the kitchen. And he's like, yeah, and I did. I started loading the dishwasher. And she's like, yeah, you did it wrong. And then, but the guy, at some point, if you tell them to do something and they go do it, and you're right there telling them how it's wrong and how they should have done it, they're going to get tired of that because nobody wants that. And they'll say, you know what? You can load your dishwasher. I'm going to go in there. And then they come in and say, see, you won't do anything to help. I don't know what to do anymore. And I'm like, okay. We'll start simple. But yeah, give up some control. Even if he just puts one dish in that dishwasher and runs the thing.
That's the start.
Who cares? It's not, nobody's gonna die.
Yeah, don't babysit.
And another thing is driving. If you're a nervous passenger and your spouse is driving, learn to close your eyes. Because I had to do that. I used to drive with everybody. Why didn't you turn there? Why didn't you go that way? Wow, you're following too close. Women see everything coming at them all at once, and we have no control over there, so we're freaking out, okay? And they're like, I've gotten to work just fine every day for 20 years. This is not what. So what I finally had to do was, when I felt that, I would just close my eyes, because, you know, he gets where he needs to go without accidents. It's not like I have anything to be concerned about. So you have to do things on purpose to overcome these, is what I'm trying to say. Number 7, realize you don't have to be perfect. You do not. One time in a class I took long ago, a professor said something that surprised me. He said that about 80% of the time, it's totally fine to be consistently adequate rather than to try to be perfect. And of course I was sitting there at that time going, that's ridiculous, because you should always try to be perfect, and that's because I was young and, well, I was a perfectionist, so I was like, that's ridiculous.
Did he feel that way on your tests?
I don't
His
know.
tests.
But the more I thought about it, as I got older, that stayed with me, because I was the kind of person who would spend hours trying to find the right font for one word in that paragraph that needed to be different, because it needs to feel good to me, and nobody cares. Okay, so stuff like that. Okay, we gotta keep moving. Number 8, pay attention to self-care. We don't have to do that anymore. Number 9, don't spend more than you have. Time, money, energy. The one thing I want to mention is when it comes to relationships. I don't know if it really fits under that title, but I put it there. So a lot of people give up on their relationship just because it's not exciting and new anymore. We want more. We want that feeling. And that's just like, that's the addiction to more that we're talking about with stuff. It's like we want that feeling of more and more and more. And you've got to work on the things that you have and learn how to be contented. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. Number 10, decide that your glass is half full. We've all got this glass called life. And sometimes your glass seems to have a lot in it, and sometimes it seems to have little in it. But mostly, the amount of liquid that you see is all based on your perception, on your perspective. There are people who on the surface seem to not have much, but they see their glasses really full. And there are people who have a really full glass from our perspective, but they're miserable and they're not happy. If you've ever been on a mission trip to another country, you can see that people who have not much are very happy and satisfied and not always trying to get more stuff. They've learned to be content, and they're not so driven by the addiction to more as we are. So even when everything seems to be going wrong, and we all have those days, you can find enough good stuff to focus on so that your glass seems full rather than empty. There may be bugs floating in your water, but your glass is full. And then number 11 is watch your attitude. If you have a critical, judgmental, negative attitude, listen to one of my favorite verses again from Philippians 4:8. It says, "And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true, what is honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about those things that are excellent and worthy of praise." He tells you to do that, and it fixes some of your attitude. Negativity is like cancer to yourself and to other people. It spreads, and you can change that. Number 12 says, stop playing the victim card. And I don't know that any of you do this, but you can create your own misery just by pushing the blame of everything that happens to you on somebody else, not taking responsibility, and saying that attitude of poor me. Stop doing that. Take responsibility and you won't be as miserable. The Greeks had a race in their Olympic Games that was unique. They ran with lit torches, and the winner wasn't the person who came in first. It was the one who finished the race with their torch still lit. So the meaning for that is, don't give up. You don't have to go as fast as you can and get as many points as you can. Just keep your torch lit and go at a pace and be yoked with God to do that. So thank you for hanging in there with me tonight. I've been all over the place in the things I've shared. And I'd like to close by reading Matthew 11:28-30 one more time. Would you read it out loud with me? Because it really has more meaning when you do it out loud. It's on your handout, Dave, if you want to just read it through. So, everybody got it? All right. So we're going to read it together. Jesus said, out loud, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest.
Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light."
So maybe you won't look at that verse quite the same anymore. It has a lot more meaning than we give it credit for. So tomorrow we'll wrap things up. It's our last day, and yeah, I hope you'll be here.